So I'm seeing some of the same names on today. So Alex, I don't know that if we need to do a repeat performance the same way as this week, or if we have any new folks, if we want to just jump into the demo to see what's changed, or.
We should have new team members. There's about approximately 15 additional
Okay.
team.
Okay. Okay.
So are you going to start at the beginning then and go for, is this really for new people today? If so, then those of us who've seen it may not need to be on here. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I just want to try to save you time. If Alex, I don't know what updates, if some of these folks that have already seen it can get some time back in their day, and then we can, go over it fresh for the new folks.
That'd be great.
Alex, your thoughts? Is that good for you? Because they've all got stuff to do. So if it's unless there, are some critical updates that we want to show them today, we could do it for the new folks.
As far as the existing team members who have joined in previous days, we've fixed the issue with the caching, so that should be resolved. We've resent the pending emails that enable password resetting. So the main thing is, if anybody was in the past 2 meetings, that is in this meeting, I want to make sure that they are set up to access the system.
This is Amy Erb. I've still not gotten my password.
Same here.
Was that Demetrios?
Yes.
Okay, so I've just sent it again. And for Amy.
And for the new folks that have joined this morning, we appreciate you hanging out with us for a minute. We're just doing some house cleaning issues from some training sessions this week, and we'll dive right in here in a second.
Okay, I just resent it again. If this third time it doesn't make it into your inbox, we may have to look into potentially having the email going into the junk folder or being blocked.
Alex, this is Toyin with DBHDS. I have not received a link either.
Yeah, Alex, I just checked the junk and refreshed, and still don't have the link in either spot.
And that's the same for me, Amy Erb.
Okay. The email would be coming from support@behaviorhealthlink.com.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything.
Do you happen to know what security program? Do you guys use Cisco Umbrella by any chance, or is it something else? Do you happen to know?
Brandon knows from me.
Okay.
Hey, I'm actually in. We use Barracuda, and I'm in looking right now just to see if there's anything that's been blocked for Demetrius, and I don't have anything from support@behavioralhealthlink.com or anything that's been blocked for his account.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, but I will say that Jenny Kelly received hers, and we both work for the same organization.
Okay.
Alex,
Yes.
good morning. This is Esther. So for those on the call, it could be that you were not on the UAT list of folks, a spreadsheet that was sent over to Alex and team. I think Heather Norton was kind of explaining that a little bit on yesterday's call. So not everyone was on that list that's on this call. So that may be it. That's likely a factor regarding some of this, just trying to troubleshoot. But I do know that Alex, that spreadsheet that you were provided for the UAT participants of the validation is probably what your focus was on, but I could be wrong.
You're right, Esther. Actually, I just confirmed that Toyin is not on that list.
Yeah, I do know like Amy is on there though. I think Demetrius is on there.
And I just resent their password resets for a third time. I'm confirming on our email system that they actually gone out. I'm not seeing that they've been received.
Yeah, and I confirmed yesterday, Alex, like I sent you that message that both Amy and Demetrius, their IP address is correct. That was provided. So initially I thought maybe it was an IP location. They've changed, you know, where they were doing this. So.
No,
Well, so let me say this though, what was sent back to me by Esther, there was a number dropped. So I cut and pasted it again. Now today I'm working from home and my husband informed me, who's, you know, that changes my IP.
the email password reset would not be impacted by the IP address.
Okay.
However, what we can do is anybody who has not received their onboarding password resets, if you can hang back after the call, we can go through and assess what could potentially be the concern or the issue.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, as far as additional items for team members who have participated in previous meetings, we added several items based on feedback and we've deployed it. This includes the initial version of gender. This includes adding additional values to the participants association, including law enforcement, medical and service provider, updating the harm to others risk screening. And Brandon, I'm not sure if you've been able to get in there to test out creating a request case.
Yeah, I just I was able to do that just right before I jumped on here, and I was able to create a new case, but I didn't see any additional queues. I still just had the NSPL queue. Just that's about as far as I've made it so far, and I'm walking through some of the rest of the piece.
Sounds good. That means that we resolved the caching issue. It'll be resolved moving forward. And as far as the queues go, the NSPL is the only one expected at the moment. We'll be loading up some new ones. And we still haven't deployed the build that fixes the saving and the validation. So just keep that in mind as you go through the case. But now that we have all that resolved, we're going to be pushing those builds out. And that's everything that's new. Christy, if you want to
Sure.
set the context from there.
Of course. Yeah, and Brandon, from there, you just click on the case and then it'll populate to the right and you can see everything else. But okay, well, without further ado, as far as the folks that have been on the calls already this week, those are the brief updates, the house cleaning items, and then we'll jump into the training again for the new folks that are on the call. So those of you that have been on this week, you know, it's up to you if you want to stay on again or for another refresher, or if you need that time back, we totally understand there. Just for those folks that may be dropping off, we'll do another update to the user guide with the enhancements and updates that Alex did last night. And then, you know, with any additional updates that are coming over the weekend, anticipation updating the guide so that you'll have an updated version again at the beginning of the week. So without further ado, for those new folks that have joined, thank you so much for your attendance this morning. You're with Behavioral Health Link, and we're going to review our SaaS application today. A few key members that you have on from our side. My name is Christy Wozinowicz. I am the sales manager and Crisis Now solution consultant. Alex is our CTO, and he will cover any product, tactical issues, updates, enhancements, everything there. And then Michael usually covers our clinical. There he is, popped in. Good timing. Good morning. And Michael will be on board. He's our executive VP for any clinical related questions, process related questions, or around any of the scoring models assessments used at the state level. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up the user guide. We found it's good to start there. and then we can go ahead and take a peek behind the scenes at the SaaS application and what we've deployed up to this point. So let me just share my screen. Okay, so most of the folks have already known that I've heard this multiple times, but Behavioral Health Link offers the software as a service SaaS application that you can use anytime, anywhere on any device for those crisis calls. Can be applicable to other situations and scenarios as well. But in this situation and the training today, we're going to cover the crisis care module, in particular, the crisis lines, how to handle those requests and do an intake is our focus for the program today. And our platform overall, it has integrated communications in it. It is a phased approach. So over time, like I said, we're going to cover the crisis lines intake today. And then as each module gets deployed, you'll get updates and refresher training on each of those modules. So without further ado, the 3 modules that you will eventually be using, we have crisis care, care management, and care services. Those are the 3 modules. We'll go into a little bit more detail, specifically on the crisis care today, which is the first phase of deployment. And pretty much as far as a crisis care center is concerned, we've enabled a platform and built a platform over the last decade or 2, really, at this point, from our work for the Georgia Crisis Access Line. We help answer other lines for Gambling Anonymous, gambling lines, the SAMHSA treatment locator, things like that. So over time, we've looked at these processes and really tried to establish a standard of care and really try to put some structure around our approach to crisis situations. How our team has also had an impact on the Crisis Now guidelines and everything, that SAMHSA put out as well. So looking at the system itself, roles and system access, this just kind of goes through the individual roles that will have access to the system, and whether it's a view, edit, administer, what's at the system level, and who will be able to get into the modules and features, as well as any reporting afterwards. And this will be included in the guide that will show you right in the platform as well. That'll be easy for you to access. Skill sets, obviously there are regional call centers. I'm going to cover a variety of skill sets from volunteer all the way up to clinicians. So we will be building out the modules specifically tailored to help those folks in their roles do a great job on behalf of the person in crisis. Territories, we covered this yesterday, CSB and regions, and some additional things that we'll clarify there, but that's just how it's outlined at the moment. Region based on teams. And then queues are going to be any crisis lines that are coming into your call center. And for right now, with the module that we're going to talk about, the crisis lines intake, we've got NSPL activated, and then these are the other queues that are coming. As far as the workflows, Alex will get into this when we do the demo here shortly, but it goes through, we're going to go through a request screening. We're going to watch Alex guide us through those actions, whether you need to start with an emergency rescue or whether you roll right into the next phase in doing the risk screening and the assessment, which will eventually lead you to the care plan and any actionable items that you need to then follow your back office process for dispatching mobile, outpatient referrals, things like that eventually. Step 1, signing in, we're still working with some of that right now. So we'll work with some of those folks after the call to find out if it's a security issue or some other issue for them logging in. And step 2 is pretty much the crisis line intake. This is the menu that's going to show right now. The 3 modules, again, crisis care, care management, care services, they'll each have a dashboard and additional service links that you can access through the menu. Pretty much when you take a call or chat or any other communication, it's going to be considered a new request because it could come in through any one of a number of communication channels. It might not just be calls. So that's why we've labeled it a crisis request. So you would click on crisis lines, click new request, and then we're going to have Alex go into more detail on all those options and drop downs this morning. But it's very quick and easy just to start a new request to help either a representative of the person in crisis or the person in crisis themselves, which we are now calling a recipient of services. Request screening form, I'll have Alex cover all of this, but in the guidebook, we'll have more detail in the update that's coming today as far as any definitions for the fields, what will be helpful for you to select so that folks aren't selecting other too many times, and that they really know what to click on and what to go to very, very quickly. And then we'll go into more detail on emergency rescue and the assessment. So Alex will do that shortly, but these will be included in here. Very simple menus across the top that'll guide you through each of these plans and the forms. So we'll just continue to repeat it a few times. The recipient is the person in crisis or the person needing services. The representative is the person calling on their behalf, and that could be a variety of different individuals, which we'll cover. So we're just going to keep repeating that just because everybody uses different terms in different states, whether it's patient, person in crisis, and a variety of different things. So we're just going to group all of that terminology for you under recipient. Risk screening, I'll let Alex go through here, but we're going to put a lot more detail in here so that you're comfortable to know this is a deductive process. So these assessments and screenings will come up and some of them are going to be drop downs, and the risk screening here will be deductive where you can click off on the box and Alex will show you that, but it'll help you save time. When we do go into the demo here in a bit, the important thing is not to get overwhelmed by everything that Alex is about to show you, because he's going to do a comprehensive review so you see all fields at one time. But as you're going through these screenings and assessments, it'll help populate to the areas that you need so that you're not necessarily having to answer each and every question as you're trying to be efficient on your call. These are just some of the other screens and categories, and I'll let Alex elaborate on that. And again, the risk assessment. So we're going to take a deeper dive into these levels as you're assessing the situation. And like I said, there are a lot of questions here. It's very, very quick to go through. And then some of them do require just a deeper dive and a standard of care in those areas to make sure that we're using the right scoring on the back end to help the individual and provide you a recommendation. And then there's going to be a notes button or notes area and a button at the end of bottom of every web form as you're going through the case. And you can click there. It'll populate an area where you can type in notes and save it at any time, and it'll save it with the record. And then the last thing is just care plan items. Alex will cover this, but this is the final part of the intake workflow we're going to cover in the demo today. And then these are the options that you'll be able to pick from: summary, emergency rescue, safety plan, or mobile crisis. So we have some noted coming because, again, this is a phased implementation. So those will be coming here soon. And that's it. So just kind of scrolling through here, these are just the rest of the screen, some care items, your outcomes. We're going to talk dispositions and search functionality, how to search for your cases. So all of this is in here, support, administrative function, how to add, delete, edit users, and all of this is in the guide. So you'll have this right in there, and Alex will show you where it is here in a second. And without further ado, I'll flip this over to him. And by the way, as Alex is going through this, if you want to drop any particular questions into chat, and I see some things in there now, but if you have any questions, just drop them into chat and we'll handle them as we go along, or group them towards the end if we get too many at one time.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Demetrius, could you check your email box one more time?
Alex, I don't know if he had to step away for a second, but I've been monitoring through our security server and I'm not even seeing it hit the mail server.
Okay.
And Alex, it looks like I just got an email come through. I reached out to our IT to make sure it wasn't being blocked. So I'll test it shortly to make sure it works.
Perfect. Sounds good. So after this call, anybody that we have on our list that I have not seen log in, I'll go ahead and resend the password resets one more time. All right, we'll get started.
And Alex, for future communications, we may want to get whitelisted or whatever we have to do, because if we need to send out training updates or anything, or the teams, we have to communicate with anybody, or the system has to communicate with anybody, we want to make sure that their security whitelist that.
We'll add that to the user guide, and we'll also include some contextual information on the website. The whitelisting every single domain might be a little bit challenging. In production, we don't have to whitelist any domains or IP addresses on our end. However, on the recipient's end, whenever they receive emails, they may have some security or heightened security that might block our emails. We'll account for that as it comes along. All right, so this will be the demo for the Behavioral Health Link SaaS product. When you receive your email, you'll be redirected to reset your password and then redirected to the sign-in screen. Once you sign in, you have various levels of functionality, and I'll start from the beginning explaining our modules. We have 3 primary modules, including Crisis Care. Crisis Care is our crisis operation module. It includes contact center functionality, the ability to manage your teams, workflows, be able to go through the intake process of either a voice, text, chat, or video. For this particular instance, we're primarily focusing on a generic channel input, since the telephony system or other types of communication channels are going to be separate from this system. Therefore, whenever you intake a request, you would use this system as a means to create a case. And we'll go through that here in a minute. When you log in, you will be landed on the dashboard. Currently, we have a few metrics that are aggregating the information that we have in our crisis lines. This is currently test data. We're going to clear that out as soon as we have everybody onboarded and good to go. And you'll start seeing some live counters based off of the information that's being entered as test data in this UAT environment, or user acceptance testing environment. From here, you will go into the crisis lines functionality, where you start to see a queue of case requests and cases being created. So as an agent that is receiving crisis calls, they will come into the system, they would make themselves available for the crisis lines, and they will see which queues are available to them. Today, we only have 1 queue, but we have plans to add additional queues. We have a service provider queue coming up next, followed by a mobile crisis queue after that. And then we're also going to be adding some additional queues like PSAP. The queues are a means to categorize the cases that are coming in. And this helps us be able to report and be able to segregate how we're responding to these cases. So the process starts by going through a new request. You go through the process of screening that request, and you select the queue that this request will be available for. We're building some intelligence and some enhancements into this whole process, since we are implementing this in a phased approach. So keep that in mind. We have several efforts scheduled out all the way to April. The first initial effort is the intake process. From there, we're going to add some service provider functionality, mobile crisis, and then several services right after that. And all along the way, we're going to be enhancing the functionality that is existing here, from making certain fields pre-fill For example, if you constantly select a queue up front, we can make it an option to be able to select that queue for future requests. So you enter the queue number, the phone number. First name, last name, location. This is currently a free text form since, it could be an address, it can be a cross street. We will be enabling the Google Maps tab ahead to be able to refine the address. And that should be available within the next few days. Then we have the ability to select requester type. This includes recipient, representative, service provider, and other. Recipient would be the individual who is being, who the case is for. Representative could be law enforcement, third party, family, relatives. It's a categorization to encompass multiple individuals or types of callers coming in. We also have service provider that would classify the caller or the requester based off any of the service providers that are registered in the system or any of the service providers that provide services. We also have other. In some instances, we include other to be able to collect that information and assess it. Where we can see patterns, we will take that information and add it as a default value. And the system will continue to learn over time. In this case, we're going to select recipient. Depending on the values that you select, you may see different flows. So for example, if you select recipient and you have all the recipient information, we have the option to start you off on the risk screener. But if you select representative, the information here is indicative of the representative, and it will start you on the steps for the participants, so you can finish entering the data for the recipient. All right, and from here we click assessment. It adds it to the queue. We're going to add other shortcuts in there to facilitate other workflows other than this direct workflow. So for example, if we need to go straight to an emergency rescue, we're going to add that shortcut into that process. Okay, so from here, I can collapse that. We have the case that we created, and I'll pause there for a second for any questions on the screening process.
Hi, Alex, this is Sherry. I did have a quick question. When you get to this screen, if it is the recipient, does that pre-populate? Because I've been in there playing around a little bit and it didn't do that for me.
It will. We have an issue with saving at the moment and the validations. Okay. That'll be resolved right after that build goes out. It'll
Thank you.
We're looking at deploying that today, end of day, around between 5 and 8. At the latest, it's going to be there Monday morning.
Thank you.
Okay, so from here we have the participants. This is anybody who's participating in the case. The primary participant will be the recipient, and we include the following fields: first name, last name, address, phone number, email, gender. We currently have our base default template. However, we have a more advanced gender component that allows a couple of different workflows. That'll be available on Monday morning. Date of birth is also included as a date field, and this will calculate age. If you're not able to get data field, you can enter age on its own. We also include military status. Military status includes a few of our default fields. If there's any feedback, please let us know. If you select veteran, it will cascade some fields that are going to be relevant to that value. The two fields that we included in here are NSPL related questions.
Question, Alex, on age. I know we talked about this earlier in the week and maybe you did answer it, so I apologize if I didn't catch it. Are you also updating the age sort of in age brackets? Like, I know one of our NSPL providers earlier in the week discussed that. Like to be able to have child, youth, the sort of the standard brackets if they're not willing to give us an actual birth date?
We didn't account for the brackets. We're looking to see where we can calculate things further out. What we can do is add another field for age bracket. That way, if you enter any of those one fields, it will populate the others.
I think we need to have that because again, if we're dealing with a minor, and especially a young minor or a teenager, and in Virginia, there's different laws around what you can consent for at different ages in terms of follow-up and services. So I think that's a kind of a critical field that helps direct plan of care kinds of actions.
Good point. And you never really know what you're going to get. So we'll make it easy. If you get one of the three, it'll give you the other two. Or, in a cascading effect. If you get age bracket, you may not get age or date of birth. If you get age, you'll get age bracket. If you get date of birth, you'll get age and age bracket. So we'll include that.
Good morning, everyone. This is Michael. Alex, and I just wanted to insert and ask the group. Some of this information could be collected in the care plan as opposed to right up front, such as gender. So I guess the question would be, what point is that relevant in the assessment and disposition? Obviously, we know we need to collect it. But one school of thought would be to defer some of this collection until the care plan. Just something to think about, because we've seen in some instances when we load up on a lot of demographics in the beginning of the call, it really just kind of delays getting to the real point of the call. So I'll just put that out there for thought. If people have opinions on it, now would be the time to figure out where that lives.
I'm just a little concerned if we wait too much to the end and we start having certain conversations again. I'm thinking mostly for minors that could be a potential vulnerability for our NSPL and or anybody else. Again, around questions that might prompt, someone else in the home with you and some other things like that. Adults, I don't probably have as much angst over, but it really that young population, that vulnerable population that, calls that line or texts that line, especially if they're feeling suicidal and we know that they're a minor. Other people chime in. There's a lot of other people on this call.
Of the opinion this simple subset is fairly clinically relevant as far as trying to triage through what you're going to be doing in terms of next steps even before you get to a care plan. Veteran status is a big indicator regarding suicidality, homicidality. Date of birth tells you, or age helps you figure out, the appropriate level of interaction. And I think it's all clinically relevant for how you're building out the rest of your work.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay. The next section is the representative. We have first name, last name, address, phone number, email, and recipient association. This includes relative, partner, law enforcement, medical provider, service provider, and other. Okay, any questions with the participants step before I move on to the next step? Okay, the next step is the risk screening. So the risk screening is composed of three major components. We have crisis categories, which include emergency, harm to self, harm to others, behavioral challenges, substance use challenges, and other. We also have prompts for each of the categories, which includes several, a few questions, and keywords. What we do with these is we combine these three components to be able to have a deductive process where an agent will have to assess all the keywords. Once the risk screening page loads, it enables all keywords, and the agent has to go through each keyword to unselect any keyword that is not applicable to the call. We take that information and it helps us assist with creating a score and also constructing in real time the risk assessment.
Hey, Alex.
Yes.
This was one area that, you know, we spent a little bit of time just thinking about the functionality for the person that's taking the call. And one of the suggestions that came to mind was in each one of those categories, could there be a button that just deselects all of those? Not for the whole screen, but would it be possible for a category to be able to do that? It just saves the number of clicks and helps keep the flow of the call going. So that was a request I just wanted to bring forward to you.
A great feature.
That is an excellent suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. I love that. That's great.
Okay, from here, the crisis categories have different meaning in different contexts. If there is at least one keyword left associated with this case under emergency, it indicates an emergency rescue is needed or an active rescue is needed. From here, it will skip the risk assessment and go straight to the care plan where you will fill out the necessary information for the emergency rescue. You can continue with the rest as well. This is primarily to guide, not necessarily to block. But if there is a medical emergency or any other type of emergency, it is highly suggested to continue forward with emergency rescue. If none of these are selected, then we go through the process of categorizing the call with the remaining crisis categories. We have harm to self, which includes these questions. If any of these keywords are left, then that's used for a formula to calculate the overall risk level, as well as to construct the risk assessment, the more in-depth risk assessment. We also have harm to others. We updated the question from yesterday. We have behavioral challenges. We have substance use challenges. And from here we have other. Other currently has care plan. We are adding one more keyword for a general assessment. This will enable going through a general assessment before going through a care plan or both. The functionality behind that would include not having any keywords selected above and still being able to provide some level of service. So you go through a general assessment, you ask several questions to be able to assist with either an outpatient referral, a de-escalation, or something that is not a critical emergency. Yes. So we have the content approved. It was approved 2 days ago. And we're formatting the content to be able to fit into the risk assessment format. And we'll have the, let me zoom in a little bit. We're still working through some of the terms, like housing will be, we'll still work through some of those vocabulary terms. Okay. Now from here, we go into the next step. We go from risk screening to risk assessment. The risk assessment is constructed based on the input that was provided during risk screening. We have harm to self, harm to others, behavioral challenges, substance use challenges, and we will have a general assessment in here as well. This includes several questions per category. The intent is to be able to dive deep enough to be able to come up with a care plan. The questions are answered through 4 different answer options. This includes yes, no, unknown high risk, and unknown low risk. We use this information to further refine the formula and come up with a score. Yes, you can consider that to have a 100% score. No would be a 0% score. Unknown high risk would be a 75% score, and an unknown low risk would be a 25% score. From here, we have a lot of business logic in the back end that assists with calculating at the answer level, at the category level, at the combined category levels, and then we provide a score. And that score is what we're going to be using as one of the mechanisms to be able to associate with the Marcus alert levels. In addition to some other things, we're still working through that. We have a meeting today to further refine some of that business logic. In addition to that, each of these questions has some level of configuration on policies and procedures. So for example, if we have a yes to this question, the question may have a policy associated to it, which is basically a rule. We can say that if this rule is triggered, then we're going to follow a specific procedure. That procedure could be indicating a Marcus alert of level 4. It could be a procedure that invokes a specific action in a care plan, like an outpatient referral or a mobile crisis dispatch. And this is used to be able to guide the agent, provide some prompts, provide some guidance. The agent can still take separate actions. This just assists with that workflow on how the organization wants to recommend the different pathways. So we can start to take some of the knowledge that we collect over the years, some of the knowledge that we collect in user guides, and start to build it into the workflow, start building it into contextually into the user interface. It assists with lowering the barrier of entry and also having some form of consistency and compliance over time. Michael, do you want to add anything there as far as the success that we're having with this type of structure?
No, I think you've covered it, Alex. Obviously, if somebody's screening positive, we want to take a deeper dive to make sure we're creating the proper care plan, either mobile dispatch, referral to outpatient services, safety plan, etc.
Okay. Any feedback on the risk assessment step? Okay, we'll move on from there. The next step is the care plan. So the care plan is like a shopping cart or a prescription. It is a collection of different actions that contains dispositions, summaries, assessments, or actual action items. This is something that we're going to be actively working on consistently over the next few months, and we're going to be enabling some of these features and some of these services over time. The care plan initially starts you off with a summary. One of the action items for the care plan is a summary. This includes outcome category, was this positive, negative, neutral. It just gives you an initial indicator to be able to have that assessment of cases start. It also provides an indicator to request a review and a summary. And this is our base template. We can always enhance it as well. From here, you can have other action items that you can include. As we add action items, this list could become lengthy. It is a searchable list. And we're going to keep enhancing this. We're going to start to add indicators as we start to enable some of these features and some of these services as to recommended pathways, different scoring levels and the implications of taking one path for another. And we'll select emergency rescue for now so we can see some of the fields that we capture as a default. So for emergency rescue, we capture voluntary, are weapons accessible, lethal means, is the recipient harmed or others harmed, is anyone else at the location, has a recipient, can you engage the recipient on the call, and summary. We have one more question that was brought up yesterday that will be adding as well. This will include not being able to locate or unable to trace. From here, we have other action items such as a safety plan. So we will have a safety plan for the call center as well as a safety plan for the mobile teams / service providers. On the mobile team / service providers, it'll be a SEP. On a safety plan, it'll be a form. At the moment, any new action items that we're adding, in order to be able to have some form of resolution as we're building this out in phases, we're going to be following a specific pattern where we at a minimum include an open-ended text field so you can enter some information, be able to classify it as a safety plan or as a mobile crisis dispatch or a service provider referral with very minimal functionality. It would just include an open-ended text field. It'll at least provide information as to I took these other actions or provide some relevant information until we can actually build out that service provider referral, the mobile crisis, and the safety plan into this. And the plan for this whole workflow is we want to be selective as to how we keep the caller, the agent engaged, where we capture information so we can provide assistance in a better format, defer data capture until it's absolutely necessary, and where it's most relevant. Okay, Michael, any other feedback that you want to provide around the care plan?
No, the meeting we had this morning, we'll be adding some fields for the mobile crisis Marcus alert data gathering. But as Alex said, this is a work in progress where we have the flexibility to add more data to help guide the process.
Sounds great. Any other feedback, questions, suggestions up to this point?
What of the functionalities that you've already talked about should be active right now? Because, for example,
yes,
when I have deselected some of the items on the risk screening, all of the questions for the risk assessment are being still pulled forward. And I was under the impression that based upon what was selected in the risk screening would determine different questions to be present in the risk assessment.
That's correct. So the relationship between the risk screening and the risk assessment will be in this next build. We enabled all questions so we can see them all together and everybody gets accustomed to this. This is a pretty big, shift in questions and how we assess a call. So we're making everything very visible. We have one more deployment scheduled going out before Monday that will include some of the fixes for saving, some of the fixes for the validation, and it will also include the behaviors that we've been talking about where it starts to lock it down.
Okay, so another question. Currently, if I click on any of the people in progress in the queue. They have the same items selected for the risk screening. They all have the same things. So if I deselected certain things for Peter Parker, for example, the same things would be deselected for Jenny Kelly and Sherry Feathers. They're all the same. I wasn't sure if that should be happening.
It shouldn't, and that's part of our saving issue. We'll have that resolved promptly.
Okay. One more thing, when I click on the risk assessment section, I don't know if this is happening for other people, but I cannot see the full question. The questions are kind of on top of each other formatted so that I can't even read the entire question.
Does it show up like this? Do you have a wide screen, small screen? Could you take a screenshot and send?
Sure, absolutely.
Does it look like this?
It does, except the questions are on top of each other, so I can't even read the entire question.
Got it.
Could just
Okay.
be a formatting thing.
It might be a formatting thing.
Like
Actually,
that, yes.
I'll go ahead and take this back. This is definitely a formatting issue.
Okay, thanks.
I got the screenshot. Thank you. Great feedback.
Hey, Alex, the only other thing I found that I'm running into right this second is when I get to care plan, I can only add one action. And then after that, it won't. Yeah. And so I can add like emergency rescue, but can't do a mobile crisis. And I can see you can do it. So I'm not sure what our difference might be there.
I noticed that too. I think there is a problem or a bug with the focus on the component. If you select anywhere outside of it and select back in there, it'll help you move forward with that.
Yeah, I'm able to add multiple. I will say safety is misspelled under safety plan if you want to.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, edit that.
Yep, the click outside of it worked. Thanks.
Correct that misspelling, and we'll correct the focus issue on the component. We'll have all of these pending items completed by Monday morning. Okay, from here, we also have one more area to call out in this call for training. Under the support module, we have guides. We've enabled the user guide in here. You can download it and download it as a PDF. We are updating this constantly. We will be putting a date as a version indicator. And then in the future, we will be putting this user guide digitally into the application versus a PDF. So it'll be easier to search and it'll be easier to account for any change sets that come through. And that way you can keep a rolling tab as to what's new from the last time that you checked it. I'm taking some questions from the chat. Under military status, can you please add family member of service member or veteran? We can add that relationship. Okay, any other questions in here?
I just had a quick question about the distinction between active duty and reserves National Guard. Is that a specific request, or is where is that distinction coming from?
We picked that up on the from the iCarol screenshots. We can make it. We can change that to just reserves or National Guard. What's
I just
your,
wanted to see if there was anybody else who needed that specific distinction, because usually we just put service member or veteran. We don't divide. Active duty is kind of a weird designation in that community. So I was just curious if somebody else is looking for that, cool, but I wasn't, most people aren't going to know the difference from a civilian community between the two.
It is broken out in our state data reporting. I can tell you from a CSB level, when we share that with DBHDS, we do break it out that way.
Okay,
I don't know how it's used on their end, but I know that we
Okay.
do break it out in that granularity.
Making sure it comes from somewhere. They'll know that. Most people would know the difference, but we'll figure out some language for the counselors on that one.
I'll
So
add
Laura-
the definitions to the user guide as well, so that's a good point.
So Laura, what were the fields that you mentioned? Or the values?
I don't want to change because that's what DBHDS needs on the back end, but I did just want to add the family member, family member of any of those categories, especially if they are a representative or third party, so we can identify them as that.
Got it.
And that's consistent with state reporting, that's also a category that we collect.
Sounds good. So, and just to recap, and we won't change it, but just to make a note of what you mentioned, it was service member and veteran, right?
Don't change what's in there because that's DBHDS's requirement on the back end. I was just curious as to where that came from. So it's good. Just adding the family member would be ideal.
Sure. Yeah, we like to collect the information and make assessments like that. We won't change it. Okay. Any other topics? Let me check the chat. Okay, Jeff, I'll get with you to go through each of the users one by one to confirm that they're in our system, and then we'll make a list of the ones that we've seen receive emails for their password resets and which ones have not, and that way we can have a list of who we need to address and get them set up. Is Jeff on the call? Yes, he is. Okay. All right, and then there was one more. Esther, the team members who are not on the list that are requesting access, would we be receiving additional list or an additional list?
I will partner with Heather Norton on that and get back to you.
Okay.
Yep.
Sounds good. We will be sending out an email with that next big deployment that I referenced. We'll probably send it out Monday morning to get everybody going.
Alex, I dropped one more note in the chat. Stacy Young is the only one from our agency that did not get it pushed through yet. Demetrius's did come through finally, and we were able to get it to him. So it looks like just Stacy is missing at this point. If you want to try to do another push for her, I can check and see if that's going to hit the server. If not, I can have our IT guy reach out to whoever you would tell me is a good point of contact.
Okay, let me check one more time in here. I'm going to push the email through. Let's see here. Okay, I've pushed the email through and she can check in a few minutes.
Thanks, Alex.
Well, thanks, everyone. If we don't have any more questions or topics, Esther or Jeff, anything else that we need to cover?
I don't think so, Alex. I'm going to send you the link. Everyone that's been participating with UAT, there's a spreadsheet underneath the testing folder. I'll send you the direct link so you can take a look at it throughout the day just to make sure there wasn't anything that was missed today.
Sounds great. All right, thank you, everyone. We'll give you some of your time back. Christy, is there anything else that you want to call out on the agenda?
Not at this point. I've just been trying to, I'm sure we'll get the recording. I know there were some issues with it, so I took some additional notes from the chat. So I'll make sure that the user guides gets taken care of.
Sounds great. Thanks, everyone, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Stacy.
Thank you.